Hello, welcome to today's session. And today we're going to be talking about building independence and universal behavior strategies that you can use at home. My name is Erin Sheehan, and I am the behavior advisor for Sturgeon Public Schools. So the first thing we need to do is talk about what we mean by independence in this context. So we're not talking about packing their bags and shipping them off to college yet, but building some of those skills they need to complete daily tasks on their own that are age and developmentally appropriate. So it's about giving them the confidence and opportunities to make decisions, problem solve, and develop self-help skills, as well as the time and space to make mistakes and learn those skills. So, for example, that might be teaching your child to put their shoes on instead of doing it for them. And, even if it takes longer or it's just kind of a thing that you do out of habit or just because, or something that, you look at your day and you might not even realize that maybe it's a skill that they haven't learned yet because you always do it for them just out of habit or ease or routine, really giving them the ability to do that themselves. So the reason why this is important is because it fosters confidence and resilience and responsibility. So it gives them the power to make mistakes and try new things, or even just learning to be bad at something, because that's hard too. And anytime we develop a new skill, it is hard. And so giving the kids the ability to kind of work through that. So the confidence to even try it in the first place, and then kind of that grit and that resilience to keep working at it, even when it's hard. And then the responsibility, knowing that it is their job and they have things that they're required to do. So children who learn to do things independently are better prepared just for challenges in school and life. So research suggests that children who are engaged in self-help tasks early show greater self-regulation and executive functioning skills later on. So universal behavior strategies are proactive approaches, so things that we do before, that create structured, predictable, and positive home environments. So they're kind of those things that we're doing. We're doing them proactively, so we're doing them before behaviors or regardless of behaviors. They're just things that are set up and that we always do. So key components of those universal strategies are consistency. Consistency really is key. And children thrive in environments where they know what to expect. And that's where that first point they're saying those clear expectations so that they really know what the expected behavior is. They know what they're supposed to do and that it's the same all the time. And so, for a child to be successful in, let's say, the shoe example, or actually one that will come up later too, is putting on or taking off our coat at the end of the day. So if it's a clear expectation that every day when we get home, we put our shoes and coats and backpacks in the same spot, it's a clear expectation. And if your child isn't independent in doing that yet, we'll talk about how to build that in, but it's still that clear expectation of the expectation is that your coat goes on this hook. And at this point, it might be that we are hanging up the coat for you, but eventually we're going to build that independence. So they're doing that themselves, but the expectation is still very clear in there. And we're using a lot of positive reinforcement. So whatever, we often refer to this as your child's carrot. So that can be something, if it's a kind of a bigger task that we're learning, that can be something big like a reward chart, or it can be really simple of good job, high fives. It can be stickers, it can be bubbles. Sometimes in some of your classrooms, you may have seen, or your kid may have talked about it when they've come home. We'll use one of those little smelly lip chaps, and when they do a good job, they get a little smelly on their hand, and they'll smell it, and that helps with regulation and some other things too. But it can be really small, or it can be kind of bigger things depending on kind of where they're at and what we're working on. But that positive reinforcement, if you remember from sessions when we talked about that previously, that is your most powerful tool to encourage a change in behavior, is really catching them being good and really reinforcing that behavior that we want to see. And it can even be a step toward that behavior. So let's say for the coat example, if we're working on building some independence around that, if your kiddo is right now, you're doing the whole thing, they come in, you unzip, you take it off, you hang it up for them. And if our goal is that they will be hanging it up for themselves, we may be reinforcing really heavily right now that they even, grab at their zipper, or they even attempt to undo their coat. That can be a great first step. And so lots of reinforcing that step in the right direction. And then really maintaining a structured routine. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be so rigid that there's no flexibility in our routine, but it provides that consistency. And that's where we talked about even clear expectations, that we kind of know our general family routine. We know that, in the morning, this is kind of generally what happens. These are my jobs. We know when we get home from school, these are kind of how our routine goes, even if it's, Monday night is dance and Tuesday is hockey. And, we know that it's not always the exact same. But this is where then, if we look on the other side of that slide, for implementing effectively, I've got visuals right up at the front. And so because our schedules can be pretty flexible and can feel unpredictable to our kiddos, it's really important to have those visual cues. So I'm sure for all you parents, you have a calendar, whether it's on your phone or it might be a big wall one at home, whatever it is. If you're like me, I know I check my calendar numerous times throughout the day to see what we have going on that night. If anybody has dance or soccer or anything else, and I'm constantly checking that because our schedule does change. And so trying to make ways that your kiddo can then get those same cues. They're probably not reading yet and not able to check their personal calendar in their pocket, but that's where we can have some visuals up in the home that can help us implement those routines. So something as simple as where their coat goes, maybe at the end of the day, maybe we've got a little visual strip that says boots, coat, backpack. And it's a little visual reminder that that's what they need to do at the end of the day. It goes hand in hand with those expectations and those structured routines that we know we get home, we put our boots away, we take our coat off, we hang our backpack up, or we take our lunch kit out and we bring it to the kitchen. Or depending on our level of independence, maybe we're emptying our lunch kit. Maybe we're putting some things in the dishwasher or the sink, or taking our garbage out. Whatever it is that works for your family, and the level of independence that your child is at. And I would encourage you to kind of keep pushing that level of independence. So we can do visuals around that, visual strips to help us with those routines, visual schedules for the week, even if it's a simple 1 week thing, and especially if you're a busy family and you've got something kind of every day, you can have a little dance symbol that's, okay, dance is Monday. You can have a little hockey symbol that hockey is Tuesday, or, mom works late on Wednesday. Those visual reminders when things are different, it helps create that sense of understanding and some control within the household. So then we have there's clear household rules. So those really kind of simple things that we're being really consistent on. And you can see on the bottom, I've got it highlighted, consistency and fairness. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit now with those clear household rules, is that fair doesn't always mean the same. So if you've got multiple kids, they don't necessarily always have to do the same thing because they're at different stages. I think of it with, if you were, on a road trip, and the person in the passenger seat generally is the one who's navigating, because they can see all the signs. They've got the view to look at everything. The person in the back seat, maybe they're on snack duty. You might have somebody else in the back seat and their job is music because you have a Bluetooth speaker and they can hook up to it so they can run it from the back seat. If it's plugged in and you're a little old school, that job isn't appropriate for them. They can't reach it. Same thing, the person in the front seat, if the snacks are all the way in the back, the person in the front seat can't be the snack person. They can't reach it. So just because their jobs are different doesn't mean they're not all helping out in some way, but the jobs are different based on the resources. You wouldn't want the person in the back seat in the middle to be your navigator because they're the last one to see any of the signs. So they wouldn't know where to turn off. So fare isn't always the exact same, but it's where everybody's at. You're not going to expect your 4-year-old and your 14-year-old to be doing the same amount of household chores or even the same style of household chores. So that's where, our expectations and our clear household rules come in, and just making sure that everybody is on the same page with that and having lots of conversations around that and understanding that if we have more than one kid, they're learning things at different rates. I have 2 kids and they're only 2 years apart. And so lots of times this conversation comes up when the expectations for the youngest aren't quite as rigorous as for the oldest. And so we have lots of conversations with our oldest child about, well, she's just learning it. And when you were her age, that was your expectation too, because that's all you could do. And now that you're older, you can do more things. And, maybe part of your job, you could help her learn. And so really striking that balance of making sure that everyone's kind of on the same field. And then adaptability is in there because we always have to be flexible. Like we talked about, our schedules are always different. Things are shifting. Kids are growing. And so we have to be really adaptable in that. Even one of the things, so I often like to start for visuals, making, a bedtime routine visual. That's something that is helpful for a lot of families, something a lot of families struggle with. And so, it may outline steps, like it might be on a little strip like this or like this, and you can even draw it out, or it can be printed on a computer. It can have stickers, whatever works. But, you might have steps like brush teeth, put pajamas on, read books. If you've got a kid that maybe needs it broken down into more steps, it might be even more specific. You might have time limits set on each of those things. You might include the person who's reading, or it might say, okay, mom and dad are going to trade. I read one night, dad reads the next night. They're really personalized to your family. And then you may have to change it in a month when all of a sudden, okay, well, now we're doing some nighttime potty training. So now our nighttime routine looks different. So we're going to change this visual schedule to adapt it to what we need it to for our changing family. So all these things are very fluid, and you're going to work on different parts at different times. And with that adaptability piece, that's also on us to be adaptive. And we want to build some choice in for our kiddos. So some simple choice. I like to call it generally some controlled choices. So it gives your child some sense of control, but also not just free reign, because certain things aren't negotiable, right? It's not a negotiable whether we're getting dressed for school, but it is a negotiable if you want to put on your socks first or your shirt first. So which one do you want to do, socks or shirt? When we're building that independence, if they're used to you getting them dressed all the time, then it can be, okay, you're going to try one thing today. Do you want to try your socks or do you want to try your shirt? I'll help you with the other one. Or, okay, you're going to put it over I'll help you put it over your head. Okay, now are you going to put in this arm first or that arm? It's giving them some choice in the matter, but also building towards that independence. So we really want to encourage some self-management. And so self-management involves teaching the children to regulate their own behaviors, emotions, and responsibilities. This is not, they're not going to do this right off the hop. This is something we have to build toward. So an example might be, creating a little, if we have a kiddo who maybe struggles with some emotional regulation, we get upset or things like that, we might create a little calm down corner in their room. And that's somewhere that they know is safe. And when they need to calm down or feel some sense of security, they can go in there and they have, a weighted blanket or a special toy or some books. Once again, you'll notice that visuals are mentioned there. I will mention visuals a lot. They're very, very handy. It does say use of tech on there. Now, what I will say is that doesn't mean use of, an iPad just to go sit and disassociate. Use of tech more so means, in this case, setting reminders or setting alarms. So, for example, one of my kiddos is working on some nighttime toilet training. And so we've got an alarm set for her at certain times of the night. So when she hears the alarm goes off, it wakes her up. She knows to turn off the alarm, take herself to the washroom, and then come back to bed. And so that's a piece of self-management for her to try and get her to that point, that she can do some of those steps independently. Or it might be an alarm that goes off that reminds them, oh yeah, now it's time to feed the dog, or whatever it is, as we're developmentally appropriate to do some of those tasks. That's what tech means in this sense, is kind of that reminder piece. So there's a gradual release of responsibility. So we want to start with really high support and then start reducing it as children gain confidence. So for example, if we're teaching hand washing, we might start first by we're modeling it. So we're washing our hands, and then we might need to, if they're not able to jump in at that point, then we may need to guide their hands toward the sink and help guide them toward it. And then we're supervising it. And then eventually we should be able to kind of just back off. Maybe we can stand and just kind of point to the sink. They've finished up on the toilet and we can gesture to the sink. And eventually they're doing it independently. So it's kind of, we're starting right there in it with them, teaching them shoulder to shoulder, side by side. We're doing those things, and then we're slowly releasing it so that eventually, and if you've got a kiddo that always forgets to wash their hand, maybe you've got a little visual that just lives in the bathroom, that just is a little hand washing visual. If you've been out and about in public, you'll see many adults need that reminder too, because there are hand washing visuals all over the place. Every public venue you go into, they are in the stalls, they are by the mirrors, they're by the doors. There are reminders everywhere to wash your hands. And that's that same kind of level of prompting. We still require that. And so we do that for our kiddos as well. And then we can teach some problem solving skills. So that can help kids become independent thinkers. So for example, you're having an after school snack and your kiddo knocks over their glass of milk because they weren't paying attention to where it was, or they slipped, or whatever it was. So instead of immediately cleaning it up, kind of stop, which I know is hard because it's milk and now it's, spreading across the counter, but stop and ask your kid, oh no, what now? They may provide, we need to clean it. Depending on where our level of communication's at, that can be a conversation. Okay, well, what can we use to clean it up? And so even if we're not directly making them clean it up, because maybe that's not the level we're at, even just prompting some of that thought around it of, well, maybe we need, oh, look, there's my brother's t-shirt is sitting right there. Why don't we just use that? Well, maybe, but there's a cloth sitting in the sink. Do you think we could clean it with the cloth? Do you think we could clean it with this? It takes some more time, but it's creating that problem solving skill of, well, what do we do now? How do we solve this problem? It's not just a problem for me to get upset about or lecture you on or give you trouble or a timeout for. It may be an opportunity for learning of, everybody makes mistakes. How do we fix it? And that's kind of the important part. And then eventually the idea is hopefully you end up with, a 14-year-old who, when they spill their milk, will jump up and grab a cloth and clean it up and know how to do that. Okay, prompting. So this is the just right challenge. Now, the goal is to provide enough support for success, but also enough challenge to promote learning. So, we really want to be supportive with our kiddos, and it's really tempting and it's really easy to sometimes do too much for them. And so that's where that level of enough challenge that they actually have to learn a little bit, but without having too much challenge that it's just frustrating and overwhelming. So we talked about that, that coat routine. So in a lot of our classrooms, you may see a poster that says the Zipper Club. It's a common thing that we work on. And when the kiddos are learning how to zip up their coat, they may need a lot of physical help at the beginning, right? To get the zippers lined up, to make it that, the one zipper tab is pulled all the way to the bottom, to slide it all the way into the bottom. It's a lot of fine motor and understanding of how it works to start. And then, that may be, okay, well, we have to help them hand over hand get that started. And then eventually we can get it that we maybe hand over hand help them start at the beginning, and then they can pull it all the way up. And then hopefully they can physically do it, but maybe we have to kind of get them there with some other prompts, and then they can do it independently. So it's kind of this gradual phase. So there are lots of kinds of prompts. So we've got kind of natural cues, like if we're, outside and the kid says, my hands are cold. He said, yeah, your hands are cold. What could we do? And maybe they've got gloves sitting there and it's like, yeah, your hands are cold. Is that the natural cue that like, hey, my hands are cold. I should do something about that. Visual cues are all those visuals that we've talked about, pictures of your morning routine, the pictures to remind ourselves to wash our hands. Verbal cues can be things like, what comes next? What should we do with that? Man, I keep tripping over your coat. I wonder where it's supposed to be. Those can be those verbal cues. We'll talk about, I'm going to say this again, but verbal cues are the most difficult to phase out. So be aware of that when you're using verbal cues. They're the hardest to wean off of. Gestural cues are pointing or doing this or kind of drawing attention to it in a gesturing way. Modeling is showing the action. So that's when you do it and it might be really theatrical and really drawn out of, I'm taking off my coat now. And it's this really big, like, ooh, we're drawing a lot of attention to putting our coat, so that it's kind of creating that, oh yeah, right, I'm supposed to do that too. Physical assistance can be even just kind of some gentle nudging to like full hand over hand prompting. We really want to avoid over prompting though. We want to come in at the lowest level of prompting, which is that prompter's promise that's there, right? We really want to do the least amount of prompting that we can. If they can do it, let them. Learning is messy, but necessary, and it takes longer. So if we know that we're in a super rush in the morning to get out the door, that's not the time that we're going to teach zippering. It's not going to cut it. That's something that we know, okay, you know what? On Saturday, we're going to spend some time. We've got some time. We're going to grandma's house, but we don't have to leave for an hour. Let's maybe start doing a little bit of that now. Set yourself up for success too, and know when and where to kind of pick that time. So these types of prompts, we want to move from the more intrusive to less intrusive as children develop the skills. But that being said, we don't want to necessarily start at the heaviest level of prompting that we need. So you can see that base is that most intensive level, is that physical hands-on help, that hand over hand. And if your kiddo, you don't want to just assume that they need hand over hand. We can kind of, say, hey, let's try putting your coat on yourself. And, maybe hold it, kind of go slow and gradual to see. And if they do need hand over hand help, then that's fine. But we don't want to just assume, and, maybe they actually have more skills than you realize in that area. So kind of that hand over hand help is our most intrusive. And then as we go and we're building independence, we're going through our verbal cues and up to our visual prompting, and then independent or a natural cue of, oh, my hands are cold. I should probably put my gloves on. So, teaching your kiddo to tie their shoes. Presumably we're not there yet. These little ones are pretty little. But once we get in a couple of years, we might look at that tying shoes. And we're probably going to have to start with hand over hand because that's hard to do. And then we're going to go to probably some verbal prompts as where, if you're doing the bunny ears or the bunny around the tree or whatever device you like to use. And then there might be some visual prompting of, you're tying your own shoes. And then they might kind of be watching you of how you're tying your shoes. And then hopefully they're independent in that. And we really want to avoid prompt dependence. Verbal prompting are the hardest to fade. I did mention that, but use them wisely. So instead of saying, put on shoes, you can point to the shoes. Over the years, I have definitely been caught on this one unknowingly. And then I've had some kiddos that I've worked with who all of a sudden would kind of be looking at me before they would do the thing, even though I knew they knew how to do it. And they'd be looking at me because they were almost waiting for that word. It was like I had to say it before they could then do the task because that kind of became part of the whole routine. And that's really hard to fade out. Or then what happens if I'm not there? And then the person who is with them doesn't say it or doesn't say it in the right way or whatever. So those verbal prompts can be really difficult to fade. And they rely on somebody else. Whereas visual prompts, even if we need a visual prompt to remember something, like a visual prompt like my phone reminding me that I had this presentation today, I can do that independently. It doesn't rely on, my boss or my partner or a friend or somebody else to remind me of that thing. That's an independent support that I can use to manage myself. So we really want to be wary of those verbal prompts. And if we can use a gesture or a visual prompt or something instead, that tends to be a little bit of a safer bet. Okay, so for example, I said we'd talk about hanging up your coat. Let's go with our full physical assistance. We'll start at the bottom. So that would be, the adult opens the child's hand, helps her to hold the jacket, moves her arms to the coat hook, and helps place the coat on the hook. So we're helping through everything. Then a partial physical assistance could be that the adult maybe the kid took off their coat and just put it on the floor. So that might be we pick it up, we put the coat in the kid's hand, and we kind of bring them over to the coat hook and tap your arm, kind of give them a little elbow nudge to get them to hang it up. A verbal cue, we could say, hang up your coat, or it could be almost a combo where we're kind of going towards a natural cue, like, oh man, I'm tripping on your coat. Oh, whose coat is this sitting on the floor? It's not as much of a direct instruction as bringing awareness to our environment and our situation and a cue that we have a job to do. A gestural cue can just be that we're pointing at the coat hook, or maybe we're pointing at the coat that's on the ground, doing kind of a modeling would be that, I'm hanging up my coat and maybe make it a little exaggerated. Visual cue could be that task strip that we talked about, having a visual schedule for our after school routine. And then a natural cue would be, I came home from school and I need to put my coat on the hook because I'm taking my coat off because I'm hot, I'm inside now. And so we kind of want to work up through those. And it may be when you start that your kiddo already can undo the coat and whatever, and maybe they're already at the stage where they're, throwing it on the ground. We might already be at modeling. We might be able to jump up at modeling. So when you come in, hang up your coat and see if your kid notices it. And then maybe it's, okay, well, they didn't. Maybe now we're pointing at their coat hook going, hey, look at this. Do you see this is empty? We can kind of once we figure out where they're at, then it's easier to kind of work our way up through these things. So the biggest thing for encouraging this independence is to let them try it. We've got to give them space to try things themselves, even if it takes longer, and it will take longer. And the other thing with that too is even if they do it in a different way than you do. And this one is really hard if you are like me and a little bit type A and you like things done a certain way. This one can be really hard. My kiddos independently, when they come home from school, they empty their lunch kits. This is a thing that we've worked on. It was a big goal of mine from when they started school, and they put their stuff in the dishwasher. I think I'm developing a twitch from opening the dishwasher and seeing how they've put the things in the dishwasher, because it is by no means up to my standards. However, the goal was that they empty their lunch kits. And so they do not have things on the proper shelves or lined up in the directions I like them. But that's something either I can take the time and teach them how to put it in properly, which we're working on with our oldest kiddo. Our youngest isn't there yet. I'm just happy they're in the dishwasher. It's building that habit. I don't want their habit to be that they just dump their stuff on the counter and expect it to be my problem. It is an expectation in our household that they put their dishes in the dishwasher. As they get older and it's more developmentally appropriate, we will work on doing that properly and having things and explaining to them once they're old enough to know that this is why they have to go in properly. They won't get cleaned properly if they're laying on top of each other. But for right now, especially with my youngest, I'm just happy they're in the dishwasher. And so it's allowing them that time to kind of learn and grow. So another example would be, letting them maybe make their own breakfast. So if they have, toast with peanut butter on it, let them spread their own peanut butter. Is it going to be messy? Is there going to be peanut butter everywhere? Yep, probably. And if mornings are not your time, don't do it then. Maybe that's an after school thing, or maybe you have a bedtime snack and that's a time to practice it. Whatever it is, you can take those little moments in your day when you have time and when you have the patience and when you have the capacity to take a breath and tell yourself, it's just peanut butter on the counter. We can wipe it up. Also, if my child is at that level, I can maybe teach them to wipe it up, which then leads, then they grabbed the soaking wet cloth that was in the sink and now there's dishwater everywhere. So taking the time to teach them that when we grab the cloth from the sink, we have to squeeze it first so it's not dripping water everywhere. There's all these little pieces to it that are very nuanced, and it's much quicker to just do it ourselves. But it's really important to let them have that time to figure it out. And then you'll see they take pride in it too. They take pride in that, well, I made my own breakfast or whatever it is. And we have to allow that wait time. So wait before stepping in. Count to 10 elephants or 10 1,000 or 10 Mississippi, whatever your preferred counting method is, but give them time. Let them struggle in it a little bit. Give them time to fix it or to figure it out, or even just to process it. They might still be working on, wait, what are the mechanics of this? How am I supposed to do this? Oh, mom's doing it. Right? We've got to give them that time to kind of step in. So, even with the zipper, if we've got it started for them and they start to pull it, but it gets stuck, but it's not really stuck. It's just like a little bit stuck. We can help coach them through it, and we can be there and in our head be counting to 10 of, oh, you've got this, keep trying, maybe wiggle it a little bit, use your helper hand. We can be encouraging in that, but don't just jump in and immediately fix it. That's not teaching them that resiliency, and that's what they need. They need to struggle through hard things. And we can do some tracking. We can do a sticker chart. We can do check marks on the fridge. We can do whatever it is, and helping them to get on the right track where it's, what's our goal? How do we do it? Let's work together. Let's get you on board. And then really patience, so much patience and time. You need that time to do it. So the most important part is to celebrate, is to really reinforce it, really praise those efforts, not just the outcome. We're not just praising when they finally did their zipper, we're praising that they even attempted it. That especially if we've got a kiddo who's really avoidant on something, it might even be that they looked at the thing. I'm not going to get into toilet training, but let's say we've got a really big avoidance for toileting and the kid even looks at the toilet, that might be like, hey, good job. Might be that they came into the bathroom and were in the same room as the toilet. That can be a woo, hey, you did it. it's really meeting the kid where they're at and really praising that effort. Or, if we're working on independent dressing and your kiddo attempted to put on their socks, they couldn't do it. They got really frustrated. They kept trying. They still couldn't do it. They got mad. They threw their sock. It might even be, I love that you kept trying to put on your sock. I know I had to help you, but I love that you tried it. We're really praising that effort. And that's, the whole idea, right, is that they're trying things that are hard. And we really want to celebrate those small successes. And it doesn't have to be big or expensive. It could be a high five. It could be a sticker. It could be extra playtime. It could be, if you're working on a bigger goal, your big reward, they could choose. It could be that they get to stay up half an hour late on a weekend. It could be that they get, half an hour of one-on-one time with you to just play. It could be that, they get to go to a movie. It could be something that has some monetary value, but it could also be something that doesn't. It's kind of whatever is going to work to motivate your kiddo and whatever is feasible for you and your family. And we really want to keep it going. We want to keep that progress going. So, we need to give those choices, like I talked about. If we're working on independent dressing, and that's hard and frustrating and whatever, we work in some of those choices of, okay, you can pick the blue shirt or the pink shirt or whatever. We provide those kind of controlled choices that we talked about. The other one, we want to be really playful in this when we can be. Kids love games. And so if you can gamify anything they're in, and that's where the I can't goof can come in. You can pretend that you don't know how to do something. Or, if you've watched Bluey, in Bluey, there's an episode where they're Bandit, the dad, he's a robot, and they have to tell him how to do things, or maybe might be the other way around. I think it's the other way around. One of the kids is a robot and the parents are trying to give them instructions. But either way, it can kind of be that where you pretend you don't know how to, I forgot how to get ready. What do I need to do first? I can't do this. What do I do? And they're like, you need to put your socks on. Whatever it is, right? It's being silly and turning it into a game and helping reinforce those routines or the way we need to kind of carry on about our day. Humor is really powerful. That's a kid's jobs, is to play. So if we can turn something into that, they'll retain it, and it's way more fun and for everybody. Even if you're not feeling very playful or humorous, it's that fake it till you make it mentality. I've started that too, where I wasn't really in the mood to be playful, but then I kind of started fake playing, and then pretty soon we're all laughing and having a good time. And adjusting expectations as needed. So like I said, meeting your kiddo where they're at, giving really clear instructions. So when you say get dressed, okay, well, what does that mean? And if I'm a kiddo who I don't really know, I don't have a weather app, I can't check what it's like outside. Even if I could, I don't really know what that means because it's -40 and I think I can wear shorts. So being really clear of what that means. So, okay, it's time to get dressed now. You need a pair of socks, you need pants, a shirt, and a sweater. And maybe we have some visuals around that, and giving them time to complete that. I do have planned ignoring on here. That can be a little contentious in that it needs to be done properly. And there's certain kind of criteria for how planned ignoring works. And so one of those things is, sometimes my son, when he's just working through stuff, he gets really verbal about it. And so he's really descriptive. So he'll be working on something, but I can't get this. Oh, this is frustrating. And if I were to jump in immediately and go, oh, honey, what's going on? It's all of a sudden kind of a bigger thing. Whereas if I'm just kind of there, but I'm still just kind of doing my thing, I'm kind of keeping an eye on him. I'm there. He knows I'm supporting him. That's also part of his process. That's how he works through stuff. So I'm kind of ignoring all the the verbal diarrhea that he's doing just to get it out of his processing. But I'm still being there. I'm still supporting him. I'm not just walking away and going to another room and, okay, well, you deal with that on your own. I'm still supporting him, but in a way that he can work through his frustrations. And if he got to the point where he was genuinely really frustrated, then I can jump in and help him. But kind of letting maybe some things slide. Or there's certain things where, or if they make a mistake, but they're learning and they kind of catch it and go like, maybe we just let that one go. We slide past that mistake and carry on. And that catch them being good. That's that really reinforcing those desired behaviors, the things that we want to see. I want to briefly touch on this. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what this says is at our base layer, we need to have these needs met before we can do anything else. So a child must feel safe and secure before they can learn new skills. So if a kid is hungry or tired or anything like that, they will not be able to do independent tasks. We need those physiological needs met. So I think we all know that our kids can get pretty whiny, explosive, a lot when they're hungry or when they're tired or they're thirsty or they're hot. Those are those physiological needs. And if those are not met, we cannot go through this hierarchy. So you can see at the bottom is kind of our base needs. Then we have our safety and security. If we don't feel safe, we can't function. And then we have our love and belonging, then our self-esteem, and then self-actualization. And these independent skills are a lot higher up in this hierarchy. So we need to have all these basic base needs met. So if your kiddo, you've decided you're going to start working on a bedtime routine, but then we are super overtired, we're grouchy, everybody's just kind of done with the day, then maybe not the day to start. Or like I said, with, I think it was the coat example. I gave an example that was in the morning. No, I think it's spreading peanut butter. If you're in a rush and you're late and all those things, we don't have kind of that safety and security met. We may not have physiological needs met. We may be really tired. We might still be waking up. That's not the time to teach a new skill. We need to teach that new skill when all those basic needs are met, when we are safe and secure. Once we're safe and secure, then we can work on those other things. Okay, our take-home message. We want to pick the just right challenge. That's that level of prompting and that just right challenge where something is hard enough that there's a bit of a challenge and they need to learn. But we're providing the level of support that they need. And so, that challenge of not too much support and not too much challenge. So that just right challenge. Stay calm as you teach your kid. And this is hard, staying calm and patient. There's a quote that is, it is our job as adults to share our calm with a child and not join their chaos. And that can be really, really hard. And if you are not in the space to be calm and patient, that is not the time to work on that. We want to use the least amount of help that is needed. So using as few prompts as the child learns the new skill, and then kind of going up through those prompts. So our most intensive, intrusive are our physical hands-on help. We want to wean off those as soon as we can. Then we go to verbal, which is speaking instructions. And we want to use those a little sparingly. And then visuals is kind of our safe bet. We use visuals. And even as adults, we continue to use visuals because we can do them independently. And we can teach our kids how to access some visual cues independently. And then really just celebrating. We're going to celebrate as our kids become more independent. And as they get more independent, we're going to fade our supports. And really just always bumping up that encouragement and that celebration and really just embracing the joy and the effort that they're putting in. And then we can increase the difficulty, well, not the difficulty, but the next level up like I mentioned with my kids and their after school routine. At the beginning, it was just bringing their lunch kits into the kitchen. Now they independently put them in the dishwasher. The older child now is learning how to put his things in the dishwasher properly for his mother's sanity. And once the youngest one, we're going to, she's starting to kind of get to that stage, we can start teaching that. And, that expectation is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And they'll have more independence in and around those things. And it's another thing off of my plate and another way that they can learn to be independent humans that contribute meaningfully to their households. Okay, so I do have a couple tools and resources here that you can look into. A lot of these are more school-based, like Class Dojo, Go Noodle, Teachers Pay Teachers, but they are something if at home you're kind of a keener, you can check them out. Visuals and schedules are amazing. You can find lots of free templates online, or you can make your own. There is also going to be a list of resources and activities on the pre-K parent portal under this section. I've got some activities and stuff written out there. They're ones I spoke about in the presentation. Things like the I can't goof, just to remind you and help you through that. And then there's some book recommendations and things like that around building independence for your kiddos. That is about all for us. Just keep learning and adapting, and your child's independence will continue to grow over time. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you learned something. As always, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My name, again, is Erin Sheehan. You can access my contact information through the Sturgeon Division website, or you can email me at my first name.last name@sturgeon.ab.ca. Thank you.